I honestly never thought I would be the person writing one of these, sitting in a dark room with a laptop, trying to make sense of the fact that my life turned into a psychological thriller overnight. But here I am, and I need to know if I am the monster everyone says I am. Imagine being told you have a literal expiration date stamped on your forehead, a ticking clock in your chest that everyone can hear but nobody wants to talk about, and then, in the middle of that suffocating silence, you find the one thing you were never supposed to have, a reason to stay. I fell in love while I was preparing to die, and in doing so, I broke every rule of medical ethics, family loyalty, and basic human decency. But if you were staring at the edge of a cliff and someone offered you a hand, would you really care if that hand belonged to a person who was already spoken for? Was I wrong for taking the only scrap of happiness I had left, even if it meant burning down several lives in the process? Or would you have grabbed that lifeline too, regardless of the cost? To understand why I did what I did, you have to understand what my life looked like 6 months ago. I was 22 years old, and while my friends were posting graduation photos and starting their first real jobs, I was learning the names of every night shift nurse in the oncology ward. I had been sick for a long time, a rare, aggressive autoimmune condition that basically meant my body had decided to treat my own heart like an intruder. I spent most of my days in a haze of prednisone and fatigue, living in my parents' spare bedroom, which had been converted into a mini infirmary. My mother, bless her heart, had become my shadow. She hovered constantly, her eyes always red-rimmed, treating me like a glass doll that was already cracked. My father just couldn't look at me anymore. He didn't hate me, he just hated the reality of me, so he buried himself in work and only spoke to me in stiff, formal check-ins. I was lonely in a way that is hard to describe. It's the kind of loneliness that comes when people start mourning you while you're still breathing. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. Every morning I would wake up and stare at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster, wondering which one of us would crumble first. The silence in that house was heavy, broken only by the hum of the oxygen concentrator and the occasional clink of a pill bottle. I felt like I was already gone, just waiting for my body to catch up with the fact that my spirit had checked out months ago. My bedroom was a museum of a life I wasn't living anymore. My unread textbooks, the heels I couldn't wear because my ankles were too swollen, the concert tickets from a show I was too weak to attend. I remember spending hours scrolling through social media, watching people my age complain about trivial things like bad coffee or a slow Wi-Fi connection, and I would feel this hot, bubbling resentment in my chest. They had decades, I had days. I felt like a spectator in a game I had been disqualified from before it even really started. My mother would come in with trays of bland food, her face a mask of forced cheerfulness that was more painful than her tears. We would have these hollow conversations about the weather or a TV show, both of us carefully avoiding the elephant in the room that was my impending funeral. Then came the day of the specialist appointment that changed everything. My regular doctor had referred me to a new clinic 3 towns over, a place that specialized in quality of life management for terminal patients. That's where I met Liam. He wasn't a doctor. He was the physical therapist assigned to help me maintain enough muscle tone to keep walking. The first time he walked into the room, I expected the usual clinical pity. The tilted head, the soft, "How are we feeling today?" voice. Instead, he tripped over the doorframe, dropped his clipboard, swore under his breath, and then looked at me and said, "Well, that was graceful. Please tell me you didn't see that." I laughed. It was the first time in 2 years someone hadn't looked at me like a tragedy. He didn't treat me like a patient. He treated me like a person who happened to be having a really bad run of luck. Over the next few weeks, our sessions became the only thing I lived for. Liam was 30, athletic, and had this dry, cynical wit that matched my own bitterness perfectly. We didn't talk about my T-cell counts or my ejection fraction. We talked about the books we hated, our mutual obsession with 90s alternative rock, and the places we wanted to go. He started staying late after his shift ended, bringing me forbidden snacks like extra salty fries because he knew I was sick of the hospital's low-sodium mush. Those fries tasted like rebellion. We would sit in the dimly lit therapy room, the smell of antiseptic fading into the background, as he told me about his dreams of opening his own gym, and I told him about the travels I'd never get to take. He became my window to a world I thought I'd closed the door on. I started to notice things about him. The way he bit his lip when he was concentrating on my leg stretches, the scent of cedarwood and stale coffee that clung to his scrubs, and the way his eyes would soften when he told me a joke just to see me smile. For the first time, I felt like a woman instead of a case study. I knew it was unprofessional. I knew he was crossing a line. But for those 2 hours a day, I wasn't the sick girl. I was just a girl. The problem was Liam wasn't just a physical therapist. He was a married man with a 3-year-old daughter. I saw the wedding ring every time he adjusted my oxygen levels or helped me stand up. We would exchange secret notes hidden in the pages of books we lent each other, and we developed a shorthand of glances and touches that allowed us to communicate right under the noses of the clinic staff. We were living in this beautiful, stolen bubble for 2 months. Liam talked about leaving Sarah. He said he wanted to spend whatever time I had left by my side, not as a therapist, but as my partner. He started looking for apartments. He was going to tell her on a Friday. He would describe the life we could have, even if it was just for a few months. A small place by the water where I could breathe the salt air. A dog we'd never have to worry about long-term. And mornings where we didn't have to hide. I let myself believe in that fantasy. I let myself believe that love could override biology. I spent hours dreaming about that small apartment, imagining the smell of the ocean, and the sound of his voice waking me up every morning. I stopped caring about the doctor's reports. I stopped caring about the medications. All I cared about was the next time I could see him. But life isn't a movie, and my body didn't care about my weekend plans. That Thursday night, I collapsed. My heart finally gave out. I remember the world spinning, the sound of my mother's scream echoing through the house, and then total darkness. I woke up in the ICU with a ventilator down my throat, and my parents sobbing at my bedside. The doctors told them it was the end. I had maybe 48 hours. All I could think about was Liam. I couldn't speak, I couldn't move, but I was screaming his name inside my head. I felt a profound sense of unfairness. We were so close to our Friday, so close to being together. And then the door to the ICU opened, and he walked in. But he wasn't alone. He was with Sarah. It turned out Sarah was a head nurse at this hospital, a detail Liam had conveniently left out. She had seen my name on the chart and told Liam, "You need to come see this girl. She's so young, it's heartbreaking." She brought her husband to watch me die, having no clue that he was the reason I wanted to live. The look on Liam's face when he saw me hooked up to those machines was pure, unadulterated horror. He had to stand there, next to his wife, and pretend I was just another patient. I watched him crumble. He looked like he was the one who was dying. Sarah was touching his arm, leaning on him for support because the tragedy of my situation was too much for her to handle. The irony was so thick I could taste it through the plastic of my breathing tube. She was talking to my mother, offering professional comfort, while her husband was having a silent mental breakdown 3 feet away. So that is the mess I was in. I was literally on my deathbed, watching the man I loved stand next to the woman I was betraying, while my parents prayed for a miracle that wasn't coming. Before I tell you what I did in those final supposed hours and the absolute chaos that followed when the truth came out, I want you to stop. Seriously, pause the video right now and go to the comments. If you were in my position, knowing you were dying and had nothing to lose, would you have kept the secret to protect his family? Or would you have set the world on fire just to have him hold your hand one last time? Tell me what you would have done in my shoes. I couldn't let it end like that. I couldn't die in a room full of lies. With the last bit of strength I had, I reached out and grabbed Liam's hand. Not the clinical grab of a patient, but the desperate, possessive grip of a lover. Sarah noticed. She's a nurse. She's trained to notice everything. She saw the way Liam's hand shook, and she saw the way he looked at me. Not with pity, but with a soul-crushing grief that no stranger feels for a patient. She looked from my hand to his face, and then she saw the small, silver locket I was wearing. A gift Liam had given me a week prior, which I had hidden under my gown. It was a locket he had told her was a lost heirloom from his grandmother. The silence in that ICU room was louder than the heart monitor. Sarah didn't scream. She didn't make a scene. She just quietly said, "Liam, get out." When he hesitated, she whispered it again, colder this time. "Get out of this room, and don't come home." My parents were confused, asking what was happening. But Sarah just looked at me with a mix of disgust and profound sadness. She realized in that moment that her husband hadn't just cheated. He had cheated with a dying girl, making it the one betrayal she could never truly fight. The weight of the secret being out felt like the ventilator was finally doing its job, letting me breathe even as my world fell apart. The next few hours were a blur of shouting and crying in the hallway while I lay there, trapped in my own body. My mother came back in, her face pale, and asked me if it was true. I couldn't answer, but my eyes told her everything. She looked at me like I was a stranger. But here is the twist that nobody saw coming, not even the doctors. They say the human will is a powerful thing, and apparently, my spite was stronger than my heart failure. I didn't die. Over the next 3 days, my vitals started to stabilize. The doctors called it a spontaneous remission, or a statistical anomaly. But I knew what it was. I wasn't done yet. I spent the next month recovering, but I was recovering in a world that had completely turned against me. My parents found out everything from Sarah, who made sure to tell them exactly what kind of miracle their daughter was. They were ashamed of me. My father went back to not looking at me, but for a different reason this time. My mother just cried. Not for my health, but for my soul. She told me she didn't recognize the person I had become, that the illness had rotted my heart long before it actually tried to stop beating. Liam, true to his word, left Sarah. Or rather, she threw him out and took him for everything he had in the divorce. He lost his job at the clinic for ethics violations. He lost his house. He lost the respect of his colleagues. He came to see me the day I was discharged. He looked 10 years older, haggard and broken, standing by a beat-up car with all his belongings in the back. He asked me if it was worth it. We tried to find that old spark, but the stolen fries and the secret kisses didn't feel the same in the harsh light of reality. We spent long afternoons in his cramped, one-bedroom apartment, staring at each other across a room that smelled like regret. He started drinking. I started resenting the fact that he was the only person left in my life. I had burned every bridge to get to him, only to find out that the man I loved was just a person, as flawed and scared as anyone else. He would sit on the sofa for hours, staring at a picture of his daughter that he was no longer allowed to see without a supervisor. I felt like I had stolen a father from a child. And for what? A few months of feeling special? I looked at him, and for the first time, the sick girl mask was gone. I realized that our love wasn't built on 90s rock or books. It was built on the fact that we both wanted to escape our lives. Now that we had escaped, there was nothing left but the wreckage. We tried to make it work for a few weeks, but the guilt was a third person in the room at all times. Every time he looked at me, he saw the career he lost and the daughter who now screamed when he tried to pick her up because she didn't know who he was anymore. Every time I looked at him, I saw the woman whose life I had helped dismantle while she was trying to be kind to me. The resentment between us grew until it was a physical barrier. We would argue about the smallest things. Whose turn it was to do the dishes, why the apartment was so cold, why I wasn't grateful enough for his sacrifice. We ended things quietly. A month after I was supposed to be in the ground, I moved to a different city, started a new treatment, and I'm actually doing well now. I'm healthy for the first time in years. But I'm healthy and completely alone. My family barely speaks to me. And I've become the cautionary tale of my hometown. I walk through the streets of my new city, a place where nobody knows my name or my medical history, and I feel like a ghost all over again. I have a job in a bookstore. I have a small apartment with plants I can actually keep alive, and I have a heart that beats steadily in my chest, but it feels empty. I see happy couples in the park and I wonder if their happiness is built on a foundation of lies too, or if I'm just projecting my own failure onto the world. I tried to reach out to Sarah once, a year later, to apologize. I wrote a long, rambling letter explaining how lost I was. She sent it back unopened with 3 words written on the envelope: live with it. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Every day I wake up and I'm reminded that I survived when I shouldn't have, but I'm living in a world that I ruined. I wonder where Liam is now, if he's found some peace or if he's still driving that beat-up car with the ghosts of his past in the back seat. I wonder if his daughter remembers me as the monster who took her daddy away. I've tried dating again, But how do you tell someone that you only discovered your will to live by destroying someone else's marriage? I'm living with the memory of the person I used to be and the monster I became to survive. Looking back, I realize that being sick doesn't make you a saint. It just makes you desperate. I used my illness as a shield to justify doing something terrible, thinking that because I was dying, the rules didn't apply to me. I thought a final wish was a get-out-of-jail-free card for my conscience. But the thing about miracles is that you have to live with the consequences of what you did while you were waiting for one. I'm alive, but I'm haunted by the look on Sarah's face in that ICU. I'm haunted by the fact that I destroyed a family because I was too afraid to die alone. So, was it worth it? I don't know. I have a future now, but it's a quiet, lonely one. I have decades ahead of me to think about those 2 months where I felt alive for all the wrong reasons. Sometimes I wish I had just let the clock run out, so I could have died a hero, instead of living as a villain. But here I am, breathing and whole, and maybe that's the real punishment. Having to live with yourself when you finally realize who you really are. If you think I'm a villain, I don't blame you. If you think I'm just a girl who was pushed to the edge, maybe you're right too. Like this video if you were on my side. Or at least if you can understand the desperation of someone who thought they had no tomorrow. Subscribe for more stories like this, and please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I deserve a second chance at life after what I did? I'll see you all in the next story.